Okay, so I have to be completely honest with you. When you sent over the reading list for this deep dive, I genuinely thought there was a typo.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely stands out on the shelf, doesn't it?
It really does. I'm looking at the cover right now, and it's this picture of a sitting United States senator, wearing a suit, looking very official and serious. But the title is "How to Test Negative for Stupid."
Right. It sounds more like a late night stand-up comedy special than a political book.
Exactly. Or maybe some kind of self-help book for people who just make really bad life choices. But this is actually a legitimate political memoir meets biting commentary, right?
It is. The full title is How to Test Negative for Stupid and Why Washington Never Will. And the author is Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana.
Okay, so before we jump into the weeds here, we should probably clarify for the listener, we are not talking about that Kennedy family.
Oh, right, yeah. No Hyannis port here, no sailboats.
Right, so a completely different branch of the American political tree.
It's very different. John Kennedy is the Republican junior senator from Louisiana. And frankly, he's become something of a viral sensation over the last few years. You've probably seen the clips online.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen the sound bites. The guy basically speaks in bumper stickers. But I think that's what I really want to figure out today for our mission, so to speak. Is this book just 250 pages of him roasting people, or is there an actual cohesive argument buried under all that snark?
That is the perfect question to start with. Because if you just watch those viral clips, it's so easy to dismiss him as just the comic relief of the Senate.
Right, it's the funny guy.
Exactly. But we really want to unpack his specific critique here without taking any political sides. The book actually lays out a very specific and quite serious critique of Washington, D.C. culture and how the federal government functions or, well, malfunctions.
Okay, so what is the diagnosis then? Why does he think Washington is testing positive for stupid?
Well, to understand the critique, we really have to start with the persona, because the messenger is just as important as the message here. When you read the source material, do you hear his voice in your head?
Oh, immediately. It's that slow southern drawl. It feels, I don't know, folksy, like he's just talking to you from a front porch with a glass of iced tea or something.
And that is entirely by design. Kennedy is fascinating because he deliberately presents himself as this simple country lawyer. He even calls himself folksy in the text. But the man has a law degree from UVA, and he studied at Oxford.
Wait, hold on. Oxford. Like England, Oxford.
The very same.
Yeah.
He is incredibly well educated. He uses stories from his upbringing in Louisiana and his long career in state politics to really ground his arguments.
So when he's using all this down-home language, it's not because he doesn't know the fancy words, it's a choice.
It's a highly strategic choice. The source notes that he views highfalutin language as a tool that the elite use to obscure the truth.
Huh. So he's basically playing a character to make a point. I mean, that feels a little manipulative, doesn't it?
You can certainly see it that way. But he would argue that he's acting as a translator. He's taking the complex, messy, and let's face it, often boring reality of Washington legislation and translating it into something that is highly accessible. He wants to make serious political points in a light, entertaining way.
Okay, give me an example. Because the book is absolutely packed with these trademark quotes and quips, what's one that actually carries the weight of his core argument?
There's a great one where he's talking about government spending. A typical politician, right? They would get up there and say, the deficit is unsustainable and our fiscal policy is irresponsible.
And I'm already asleep.
Right, it's dry. But Kennedy writes, we're spending money like a drunk sailor. But then he adds, and this is the kicker, he says, but that's unfair to the drunk sailor because at least the sailor is spending his own money.
Okay, I laughed. I admit it. That's pretty good.
It is funny, but look at the efficiency of the argument there. In two short sentences, he's made a fairly complex point about moral hazard and the irresponsibility of spending taxpayer funds. He calls this his common sense wisdom.
So his whole central thesis is that Washington has just completely lost its common sense.
Essentially, yes. He argues that the federal government is out of touch, it's self-serving, and it entirely lacks common sense. He posits that there is this Washington bubble.
And who is inside this bubble?
Inside the bubble, you have the political elites. And he targets the establishment in both parties, by the way, though he is obviously much harder on the Democrats. But he argues these elites care way more about image than substance.
Meaning they care more about how things look than actually solving the problems.
Exactly. And that leads to a massive disconnect. He believes these elites have no real connection whatsoever to the problems of ordinary Americans, the people who actually have to balance a checkbook or drive to work or worry about the price of gas.
So when he talks about testing negative for stupid in this context, stupid doesn't really mean having a low IQ.
Not at all. He knows his colleagues are book smart. Stupid in this book equates to a total lack of practical, real-world understanding. You can be a genius academically and still be totally clueless about how the world actually operates.
Reality dumb. So he's saying you can have a PhD and still be an idiot if you don't know how to change a tire.
Or if you don't understand that printing trillions of dollars might make a loaf of bread cost $5.
Yeah.
He really frames it as a cultural disconnect.
Okay, but look, this idea of the out-of-touch elite isn't exactly a new concept. Every politician runs against Washington. What makes Kennedy's version of this any different?
It's the ferocity and the specific targets of his attack. He's not just saying bad laws are being passed. He's diagnosing a broken culture of communication. He spends a lot of time in the book going after what he calls performative behavior.
Like grandstanding for the cameras.
Right. He argues that many people in D.C. don't actually want to solve the problem. They just want to look like it are solving it. Or they want to signal that they're on the right side of an issue. And he really targets the media here as well.
Oh, I'm sure the media just loves that. What's his specific critique of them?
He details a total breakdown in honest political discourse. He views the media as enablers of this performative behavior. He suggests journalists are often part of that same elite class with the same biases, and they help maintain the bubble.
Is this where the critique of wokeness comes in? Because I noticed that word pops up quite a bit in the source material.
It does. He strongly lambasts woke ideology and the excesses of bureaucracy. For Kennedy, woke isn't just a cultural buzzword. He sees it as prioritizing ideology over reality.
Can you give me a concrete example from the text? Because that word can mean so many different things depending on who is saying it.
Sure, let's look at how he talks about crime. He aggressively critiques the movement to defund the police or to embrace what he calls hug-a-thug policies.
Hug-a-thug. He actually put that in print.
He did. It's classic Kennedy. But his point is that the elite view is to look at the root causes of crime, like social inequities and systemic issues, which are valid academic discussions. But Kennedy argues that while you're having a theoretical seminar on sociology, regular people are getting carjacked.
So to him, stupid is worrying about the ideology instead of the immediate safety of the victim.
Precisely. This is his diagnosis of why the system is broken. It's a broken culture that refuses to just look at the reality in front of them.
Okay, so let's pivot a bit here because we've talked a lot about the satire and the humor. But the source material notes that he does actually step aside from the jokes to outline a serious governance philosophy.
Yes, he does. Beyond the satire, he addresses several very specific policy areas: immigration, crime, China, and the justice system.
Let's walk through those. How does his whole common sense approach apply to something like immigration?
Well, it ties directly into his core tenets for good governance, which are plain speech, accountability, and enforcing laws. On immigration, his view is very straightforward. You have laws on the books, you enforce them. He sees the bureaucratic dancing around border policy as just another example of elites overcomplicating a simple issue.
Just a law and order approach. You break the law, there are consequences.
Exactly. Yeah. The same goes for the justice system and crime. He actually writes, "I believe that love is the answer, but you also have to own a handgun and a German Shepherd."
Wow, that is a very stark way to put it.
It is, but that is his plain speech philosophy in action. He genuinely believes that saying what you mean is the first step to good governance.
So plain speech equals clear thinking to him.
Yes. He argues that if you have to use $20 words and massive bureaucratic documents to explain your policy, you are either hiding something or you don't know what you're doing. He connects clear language directly to accountability.
Because if the public can't understand the rule, how can they hold the politician accountable for it?
Exactly. He thinks the absurdity of Washington is hidden in the jargon.
What about foreign policy? Because you mentioned China as one of the specific issues he covers. How does a folksy approach work with the complex nuclear superpower?
He essentially boils it down to strength versus weakness. He argues that the Washington establishment wants to manage the relationship with China through diplomacy and endless nuance. Kennedy's view is much blunter. He views China as a predator.
A predator?
An economic and military predator. He points to intellectual property theft and military posturing. His argument is essentially that you need to stop trying to be friends with the guy who is actively stealing your lunch money.
So punch the bully in the nose,
Yeah.
economic decoupling, that sort of thing.
Right. He demands accountability on the global stage, just like he demands it domestically. He thinks the nuanced approach has failed us.
You know, it's really interesting because throughout all of this, he's positioning himself as the ultimate outsider, the guy on the porch with the iced tea, looking at Washington and shaking his head. But he is a United States senator. He's been in politics for a very long time. Isn't he part of the very establishment he's criticizing?
He is very aware of that dynamic. But he frames his experience as going behind enemy lines. It's an insider positioning himself as an outsider. He's using his position inside the Senate to throw stones at the institution itself.
Ah, so it's like he's a spy for the common man. He's in the room where it happens, but he's reporting back to the public saying, you won't believe how absurd this all is.
That is a great way to put it. It allows him to cut through the bureaucracy with an authority that an actual outsider wouldn't have. He knows how the machine works, which makes his critique of it much sharper.
So as we look at the whole picture here, the book is really this unique blend of a personal memoir and a highly critical political manifesto,
Yes, it challenges the status quo by using humor as a weapon. Yeah. He dismantles the political elite by refusing to play their language games.
which is fascinating regardless of what your personal politics are, because reading the source material, you really get a clear look at that outsider within perspective.
Definitely. It shows how powerful plain speech can be in a town that runs on jargon. He uses the humor to make the medicine go down, but the medicine is a very sharp critique of how America is governed.
Well, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over based on all of this. Kennedy makes a very compelling case that Washington is this impenetrable bubble of absurdity and performative behavior. But if that bubble exists, who is really responsible for popping it? Does the responsibility lie with the politicians who are safely inside the bubble, reaping the benefits? Or does it lie with the voters who keep testing positive for hope and sending the exact same people back to Washington year after year?
That is the real question, isn't it? Are the voters the ones enabling the performative behavior by rewarding it?
Something to think about the next time you watch a political debate or catch one of those viral clips online. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Here's a great discussion.
We'll see you next time.